Yo, it's the Latino Newsletter podcast, a show about us all the time. I'm your host, Julio Ricardo Varela, and a special thanks to the generous support from the Latino Community Foundation for Season 1 of this podcast. Learn more about the Latino Community Foundation at latinocf.org. Before we start, I'm actually thinking a lot about my family and friends who are in the path of Hurricane Milton in Florida as we speak. You know, it's moving away from the state, but it's hard to wait for news about all our loved ones who live in the state. So I know it can add a lot of stress when you're physically not with your family, but just thinking about all of us that have family in Florida. Okay. So this is episode 11. Ours goes to 11, right? Episode 11. Stranger things have happened. See what I did there? It was a big deal. We got to episode 11. And today we're going to check in on the state of the 2024 race and Latinos. And yeah, I have a guest who I have known since I was a teenager because we were classmates in college. Okay? I graduated with this guest. So I'm going to read his bio. Ruben Navarrette, that's how you say it, Spanish style, in Espanol. Oh, I'm sure he gets Ruben Navarrette in the American style, is a nationally syndicated columnist with Creators Syndicate, writer of the Navarrette Nation newsletter at Substack, regular contributor to Spectrum News 1 in Los Angeles, a contributor to the Daily Beast on the left, and Newsmax magazine on the right, feature writer for Latino Magazine, member of USA Today's board of contributors, host of the podcast Ruben in the Center, regular contributor of video commentary to Omaha-based Straight Arrow News, author of A Darker Shade of Crimson, Odyssey of a Harvard Chicano. I mean, I read that back in the day when it came out in the 90s. Ruben is also founder and CEO of the Navarrette Sonic Podcast Network, and he's also a communications coach specializing in personal brand development and the creation of media projects for individuals, companies, and nonprofit organizations. This man is busy AF. He's a classmate, class of 90. You know what I'm talking about. Ruben, look at you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here.
So, listen, I'm thinking a lot about the latest Suffolk University USA Today poll of Latinos in the swing states of Arizona and Nevada. And you know this, in Nevada, Latino men aged 18 to 34 chose Trump, 53%, and Harris, 40%. And in Arizona, it's Trump 51, Harris 39. So, Ruben, break that down for me. Why are we seeing Latino men in Arizona and Nevada going for Trump?
That's really the best question. It's really a great question. And you zeroed right in on the two problematic states. Obviously, a campaign of 50 states is coming down to 6 critical battleground states. 2 of those states jump to mind right away as having very significant Latino populations, Arizona and Nevada. And as you correctly point out, in both those places, Trump is doing much better than the Democrats feel comfortable with. And he's doing much better specifically with Latino men. He doesn't have much of a prayer with Latino women. He never has. But he's done well with Latino men. And here you have something going on, Julio. The same problem that Joe Biden had with Latino men before he left the race, that problem has been inherited by Kamala Harris. There's a mistaken impression somehow by Democrats that if you take the car and you paint a different color, people are going to think it's a different car. When it has the same engine, it has everything else. And so clearly for a lot of those Latino men who were not warmed up to Biden, they're not warmed up to Harris either. And that's been a real problem. So Democrats, I think, are fooling themselves to think that there was some major shift there when Kamala Harris got into the race and Joe Biden got out. It did not affect the lack of support among Latino men.
All right. So why do you think Latino men are not for Democrats in those states? And you're on and this is like a West Coast take, because I can flip it around on the East Coast and be, well, Latino men might be a little bit more for Harris. Probably, I wouldn't say they're the same numbers from this latest Suffolk University USA Today poll. And I'm not saying that Harris is running away with Latino men in the Northeast. What's your take on why this is happening?
Well, let me tell you why it's not happening. You've heard about low information voters. There's also such a thing as low information analysts. These are people who sit in our chairs and who offer political commentary analysis, and either they're just not very smart, or more
Okay.
oftentimes they're blinded by their biases. So if
Okay.
they're Republican analysts, they give you Republican analysis, and a Democrat gives you Democrat analysis. If you
Okay.
are someone who's really over the moon for Harris Walz, you look at this lack of support among Latino men, and you do what you would normally do. Julio, you blame the Latino men. There's nothing wrong with your candidates. Your candidates are perfect. So there's something defective. There's this kind of basket of deplorables
Those
you
Latino
mentioned going on
men.
Latino men. And it's obvious that they're macho men who will not support a woman. This is what they say. It's all about sexism.
Okay.
And as I said before, that's not just insulting to Latino men, who we have to remind people there are plenty of Latino men under the age of 60 who have grown up in a different world with regard to women. And we don't have that same sort of hang up that our parents and grandparents may have had. But it masks the real problems that the candidates have. And here I think is what a lot of it is about. For Latino men who work to support their families in Arizona and Nevada, let's say you work in Nevada and you work in the hotels, or the casinos, or the restaurants, or the whatever, you're about bread and butter issues. You're about the economy. You want somebody who is competent to do the economy. And it hurts Kamala Harris that she comes from an administration that's responsible for runaway inflation, that has had a weak economy, and has projected this idea of sort of incompetence, that they don't know what they're doing when it comes to the economy. So just on the economy alone, I think that the Republicans are going to have an edge. Lastly, there's this other thing, and that is it lives in Boston, it lives in New York, it lives in San Francisco, it lives in Seattle. This kind of woke orthodoxy that Democrats take on, where they will fight over issues, not just abortion, but also like, transgender issues and other issues. And come on, those issues are not going to play with Latino males in Nevada and Arizona, who don't really care who the most woke is. They care about their bottom line and their paycheck. And so that's a trade-off. That's a strategy that may play well for Latinos in Boston or in Seattle or San Francisco, but not in Phoenix or Las Vegas.
All right. Well, so then this is the follow-up question to that. Given, because you've been doing this, you're a veteran. You've been doing this for
35 years.
35 years, several cycles. We talk about the historic patterns of the Latino vote. So do you think Kamala Harris needs 65% Latino vote to win nationally? National Latino vote? Or this is more of a swing state thing? Explain.
If you have 6 states that decide this election, if in fact it's Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina's on some of the polls. If in fact it comes down to those states, losing 2 of those states is gonna hurt her for sure. That's gonna, and who knows how she does in the others. But it also has been true forever that if a Republican gets somewhere in the 20s, like a Mitt Romney type showing, the Democrat's going to win.
Right.
But if a Republican gets 40% and above, it's a blowout. You saw George Bush get 44% of the Latino vote in 2004. Ronald Reagan 40% in 1984. So when those things happen, be it Walter Mondale in 1984 or John Kerry in 2004, they're going to end up like a turtle on their back. There's no way they're going to win that election. If you kiss off 40% of the Latino vote, you're done. Right. So the skew's a little different. I think, again, for low information, low ability analysts, they tend to say, well, Ruben, what's the problem? Kamala Harris won 55, 60% of the Latino vote. That's the majority of the vote. Yeah, a majority of a vote that typically Democrats see as being in their back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, it's as if one day a Democrat got 40% of the white evangelical vote.
Yeah.
So Republicans would say, oh, well, we still got 60%. Yeah, of a constituency you were counting on getting 90% of. So the bottom line is, if those numbers hold true for Trump, and he does much better than expected, much better than I think he deserves, and he gets north of 32, 33, 34% of the Latino vote, she'll probably lose.
Okay. So with that said, how would you compare this election 2024 to all the other cycles that you've covered and written about and given your hot takes about when it comes to Latinos? And if you want to bring it all the way back to, the pre-internet days, or, when you started doing your work in the 90s, when right out of school. Give me that context, because that's the one thing that people seem to be overlooking. When you talk about like the simplistic, biased talking head takes about the Latino vote, because I don't know about you, Ruben, but I think like now that has become mainstream, all these takes. Latinos are not a monolith. When you have white old men talking like that, that the Latino vote has become sort of this mainstream topic that might not get explored with such complexity. So what do you do, Ruben Navarrette, in those situations where you're like, yo, hold my beer. You guys have to think, these are the things that you have to keep in mind when talking about the Latino vote in 2024, and how does it compare to previous cycles?
So you have to start off with a couple of things. First of all, geography, the fact that, the media that I've been working for as long as I can remember, I have lived in cities like Phoenix, Dallas, San Diego, Los Angeles, and my checks and my money have come from New York and DC. And so the media capitals of this country are Washington, D.C. and New York City. And if you go to those places, you will find Latino populations in those two cities, but it ain't like Phoenix, Vegas, LA, San Antonio. So they already start off with sort of a geographic blind spot because they're not able to see that population. They also start with a different kind of blind spot, which is that they live in a black and white world. So the media is black and white, okay? And they can't see beyond that. And you might have a Sunday morning show, Julio, with Meet the Press or something, with a black moderator and white guests, and they're having a very energetic discussion about the Latino vote. They're speculating, as we say in Spanish, con toda la boca, about what Latinos are going to do as non-Latinos, right? And I don't even know if the irony doesn't hit them. So in that regard, they already start off with a position of sort of ignorance. They don't really think about us. Normally, every 4 years, they talk about the Latino vote. They don't really understand us. A lot of what they say is wrong. It's simplistic. Some of it's racist, chauvinistic, you name it. So all I can do is take in all that information. I shake my head a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I despair that they're not getting it right. But, more for me, it allows me to come in there and do it correctly. So there is a lot of nuance to the Latino vote. I think a lot of people are not happy with Trump, and I think that they see Trump as a non-starter. And let me just tell you where I am, just speaking for me.
Yeah.
It was my 15-year-old daughter who a day or two ago, every week she tests me and says, okay, Dad, enough is enough games. Who are you voting for? And I've been very elusive and vague, and I've said, I'm undecided. I've said 10% of the population is still undecided. It was about 18% before Kamala Harris got into the race, but now it's about 10%, and I'm one of the 10%. And then she looked at it and she goes, well, let's unpack that, right? She's like, I know that you're not going to vote for Trump. You're not considering voting for Trump. And I said, that's correct. Trump's a non-starter. I'm a never Trumper. I never would vote for him. I never have. Okay. So then she said the magic words. She goes, so what you're really talking about is you're trying to make yourself comfortable and get comfortable with supporting Harris.
That's a smart kid. Yeah.
And I said, that's exactly right. I mean, I didn't even see that. Right? She had to explain it to me. I didn't get it, but she's right. And I have had to become comfortable voting for Harris and supporting Harris. And I'm running across a lot of Latinos who likewise are in the same space, who are not going to vote for Trump. You don't have to worry about that. But they're either going to go third party. They may not vote at all, but they do not feel a sense of confidence that Kamala Harris is ready to lead. And here's what I think. And it's going to be harsh, but I'll just say it. I don't get any pushback from all our friends in the Latino community, all our Latino Democratic friends, some of whom are journalists, but some of whom are not really journalists anymore. They're Democrats first and journalists second. They lead with their Democrat first, and they've stopped being journalists a while ago. I don't get any pushback from them when I say the following. Clearly, Donald Trump is morally deficient. He's morally deficient enough not to be president. They agree. But the second part, they bristle at. It's clear to me and a lot of others that Kamala Harris is intellectually deficient. She doesn't have the intellectual capability to become president. She's not a deep thinker. She's not a reader. She's not someone who throws herself into policy. You see the most recent interview with Bill Whitaker. This is not Fox News and Sean Hannity. Bill Whitaker at CBS News and 60 Minutes interview. It's terrible. It's just, these are terrible interviews. he keeps having to go back, Julio, and say, but Madam Vice President, the question was, right?
Yeah.
How do you spin this? How do you spin this? Shame on them. Shame on all my Latino journalist friends who are Democrats first, and they're just bullshitting everybody and saying, oh, she did great last night. There's no way a real journalist can look at those interviews and say she's doing great.
So how is that applied to, in your estimation, why has there been this quote unquote Latino problem? Is it because there's more independents that are younger that don't believe in both parties, that aren't into this sort of hopeful message that's coming out and really want the bread and butter? Like, where's the disconnect?
Well, when I said what I said to kind of explain why I'm trying to convince myself to vote for Harris. And I'm trying to get comfortable with it. But I didn't just make that up. I didn't just wake up one morning having covered politics for 35 years and said, well, Ruben's kind of like trying to be the belle of the ball. He wants to be courted. He's being too cute by half. He's just holding out. No, I really have my doubts that she has the capability to be president. And she's not helping herself any. And I was having this conversation, Julio, and I'm going to get to the question about generations, because I think you put your finger on something really, really important, the various divisions in the Latino vote. And brother, if you want to pinpoint an area where the black and white media don't get us, where the mainstream media, the CBS's, ABC's, NPR's, and New York Times people don't get us, we're about to get into that. We're about to explain one big area of why they don't get us, or
Okay.
one why they don't get us. But back to her intellectual deficiencies. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who's pro-Harris. And I said, you know what? I said, it's your fault. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, the Democratic Party has shown us people like Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. These are people of strong intellect. These are people who actually read, study, think, challenge. Bill Clinton famously would go to these policy meetings, just soak up a policy wonk, right? And so you showed us that it's possible to have Democrats who are really, really smart. And then you show me Kamala Harris.
Intellectually deficient is that's pretty out there when you're talking to your 15-year-old daughter too, Ruben.
I'm not here to say that because I want to see women succeed, or because I want to see my two daughters succeed, or because I think that my two daughters are going to have a harder road than my son. I'm not here to say, just give me any woman and I'll vote for that person. And I would say the same thing about Latinos. If you send me a Latino candidate who is not intellectually prepared, I will say so. And I don't care if they kick me out of the Latino club, right? So I will say that about people of any color, of any gender, of any whatever, because it's true. So I have heard from a lot of people who say they're ready to vote for a woman. They're just not ready to vote for this woman.
Okay.
But when I was telling my friend about Clinton and Obama and these others, I said, here's my thing.
Yeah.
I seem to recall that when Republicans put up people who did not appear to be very smart, and three names come to mind: Dan Quayle, Ronald Reagan, and George W. Bush.
Okay.
My liberal Democratic friends in cities like Boston and Seattle and San Francisco would make fun of those people and say, this guy's an idiot. This guy's an idiot. And at that time, they treated getting elected to be president like the spelling bee. You're not smart enough to be president, they said about those three people. But now all of a sudden you have somebody who look at the tape, read the interviews, see how she prepares herself. She doesn't answer questions. It is clear that there is not a lot of depth there.
Thank you for explaining that. I will say, as a friend and as a colleague and as someone who's done the work, but not as long as you have, I don't think she's intellectually deficient. I actually think she's a very smart, tough-ass woman, and I like to hang out with strong women. But I'm gonna end that point because I wanted you to end the show with you did this reveal of like, well, this is the one thing about Latinos that the rest of the world needs to understand, and drive that home, and then.
Well, here it is.
Go for it.
I'm happy to do that. It's the divisions. It's the complexity. It's the nuance. It's the fact that several things about us they don't understand. They don't understand how we register Democrat by a 2-to-1 margin, but those have always been conservative Democrats.
Got it.
like Sam Nunn type Democrats. And when they did away with conservative Democrats, like and liberal Republicans, they did away with those. The parties beat those people out of the party. Each party did that. Then that lessens some of our choices.
Got it.
We are two things at once. We are conservative by nature as Latinos, and we're Democrat by nature. So when we're happy like clams when we can have, a conservative Democrat to vote for. In the absence of that, some of those people vote Republican. But the other thing that they miss, and you hit on it, was a generational thing. You've got 5 people sitting at the Christmas table. You've got the 5 generations. You've got the silent generation. My mom and dad are in their 80s. You have the boomers who are in their 70s. You have you and me in Generation X in our 50s.
Yeah.
After that, you have the millennials who are probably now in their, 40s and late 30s and 40s. And then you have Generation Z, 18-year-old voters and above. And the point of the story is those 5 generations are coming at Kamala Harris differently. She may do fine with older generations who are just going to vote the Democrat, vote the D.
Right.
But she's having trouble with younger generations who do not feel as inspired by her.
But that's been the Democratic issue for a while now with younger generations. I mean, I don't think it's applying to Kamala Harris only. You would think it's...
She's inherited it.
She's inherited. Okay. This is what I knew I was going to get into with the show, but give me your final thoughts to this last point.
They don't understand our complexity. They don't understand that we have these divisions between us, that if you want to talk about the Latino vote, you have to talk about rich versus poor, educated versus non-educated, college educated, not college educated, rural versus urban. That's a huge one. The folks on the East Coast, the folks on the West Coast, and then generational. So it all splits up a lot of different ways. And all I want, and I'll end with this.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump does better with Latinos than he deserves, speaking as a never Trumper, then shame on the Democratic Party. Because I never see this as as examples of what Donald Trump is doing right. I always see this story as an example of what Democrats are doing wrong. And Democrats who neglect us and take us for granted and see things in black and white terms, and they only show up at Cinco de Mayo with nachos and chips, they got to do better. They've never done better. They don't listen. Democrats don't listen to me. They don't listen to you. I've read your stuff. You've read my stuff.
I'm listening to you. And the reason I listen to you is because I've known you since I was a teenager. And Ruben Navarrette, as they say in America land, but Ruben Navarrette, thank you so much for being on the Latino Newsletter podcast with me.
Julio, so good to be with you.
Thanks again, Ruben, for being on the show. I have known Ruben since I was a teenager. I was in college. We had mutual friends, Chicanos and Puerto Ricans. We rolled in the Latino circles. I might not always agree with him. And I do think some of his opinions sometimes, he's paid for hot takes, and he knows that. And I've told him this. And sometimes the hot takes, they might be a little bit too hot. I don't agree with the assessment of Kamala Harris. I think American media looks at women differently. They are not at the same pedestal as men. And I do think Donald Trump is being treated with kid gloves. And this whole two sides thing is a little bit unbalanced. But when it comes down to it, yes. Do Democrats have issues with some Latino voters? Yes. Have they done a better job? Yes and no. Is the Democratic ticket giving Democrats a chance to keep the White House? Yes. Is it a done deal? No. Is it going to be a very close election? Yes. So we will see. We will see. The Latino Newsletter is produced and edited by me, Julio Ricardo Varela, and fellow Boricua, Joaquin Cotler. Mixing and sound design by Joaquin Cotler. Music by Cast of Characters via Soundstripe. You can now donate to us at thelatinonewsletter.org and click on the Donate tab. Or if you go to our show page on Spotify, there's a donate link. And if you like what you heard, please, we need your reviews. We need your ratings. Write whatever. Wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on Spotify, like we said, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeartRadio, etc. We're on YouTube. Tweet us at Lat Newsletter. On Twitter, X, whatever, that platform. And all the other social media platforms that we're on, just enter the Latino Newsletter. And if you want, you can send me an email at julio@thelatinonewsletter.org. We'll be back next week with episode 12. Peace out, y'all.